So this year's budget has been fairly eventful from a tax perspective, both in terms of business tax, personal tax and indeed indirect tax. So if you take these in turn, from a business tax perspective, I guess the headline is one of good news because the Chancellor has announced that the main rate of corporation tax is to be reduced further down to 17% from 2020. And this really does make Britain the most competitive tax regime within the G20. The Chancellor actually said that Britain is blazing a trail and it's for the rest of the world to follow. But if we actually drill down within the detail of that, there are some winners and losers, and I think it's fair to say that the real winners are small businesses and the potential losers are big business. So from a small business perspective, the good news there is that there is a potential absolute exemption for business rates, which will save something like 1.5 billion for small businesses. There is a significant reduction in stamp duty land tax, and there's also a real incentive for investors to invest in small private businesses. Other costs to large businesses is a reduction in the availability to carry forward tax losses. They will be restricted to 50% of taxable profits from 2019. Although one final piece of good news, I guess, for large businesses is that dates at which corporate tax will be paid is going to be deferred until 2019, so the acceleration of the payment of tax is actually going to be deferred. From a personal tax perspective, the budget is essentially a tale of good news. So the personal tax allowances are increasing, as is the rate at which people will pay 40% tax. Capital gains tax is being reduced, which again is very good news. And probably the biggest surprise, if you like, is around ISAs, so people who are aged under 40, as at April 2017, will be able to contribute £4,000 per annum into an ISA, and the government will also contribute a further £1,000 to these ISAs. So generally, very good news from a personal tax perspective. Finally, on indirect tax, the big story, of course, is the sugar tax, where the government has listened to representations and will introduce a sugar tax from 2018. This gives companies involved in this industry 2 years to either change the formula in their products or to decide how they will pass this cost onto the consumer. There's also an increase in insurance premium tax of just 0.5%, but the good news for our region is that the funds that this raises will get contributed towards flood defences, and all of that money is essentially earmarked for the Yorkshire region, which is good news for us. And finally, fuel duty hasn't increased. There had been quite a lot of speculation that this would be increased given where the oil price is at the moment, but that won't be increased, which is good news for the motorists when combined with the news that we've heard today as well, that the M62 is finally going to be upgraded.